Leaders of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe and the Oglala Sioux tribe are clashing with South Dakota Republican Governor Kristi Noem. The tribes are refusing to take down their highway coronavirus checkpoints set up on sovereign tribal land in order to protect their own citizens. The reservations, they're poor, and they don't have the healthcare resources that other parts of the country do, and yet the Republican death cult shall not be stopped. Noem wants to reopen the state and doesn't respect Native sovereignty, so she said she'd follow through with a lawsuit against the tribes yesterday, taking them to federal court. And she also keeps claiming that the tribes are holding up essential services from traveling without any evidence.
So I just want to make sure with these checkpoints, are you saying that there's essential services that are literally being turned around, or are they just being inconvenienced at the checkpoint and are being held up there? Are they actually being turned around and not allowed to proceed?
I'm not going to give specific stories today, but we do have situations where people have tried to just travel through, not stop, and have been turned around. We can't have situations where in the future we have an ambulance or a doctor, somebody that needs to get through a checkpoint to help someone, and it's not able to be facilitated through a checkpoint. So there has been situations and we need clarity, and that is one of the reasons that you're seeing the actions being taken that are.
No evidence there provided that tribes aren't letting essential services through. That's just ridiculous. They are saying that they are. It's just inconvenient for the white residents in South Dakota to have to fill out the questionnaire. They have to fill out a health questionnaire each time they enter or leave tribal lands, and it limits non-residents from entering the lands unless they have a travel permit or they're essential, an essential business, an essential service. Ranchers in South Dakota are considered an essential business. So what she's claiming, it doesn't line up with the facts. It's just a part of a larger effort that I saw in the Dakotas between the hardcore Republicans there, the white people, and the natives that have their own sovereignty and have their own values and way of legislating, and it doesn't align with the hardcore right in the Dakotas. And what's also interesting about this story is that the outrage about what Noem is doing seems to be bipartisan within South Dakota and their legislature. On Sunday, a bipartisan group of South Dakota legislators whose districts include tribal lands sent a letter to Noem. Your statement that tribal governments do not possess the ability to establish checkpoints within the boundaries of their homelands is not accurate. They said that the Fort Laramie treaties of 1851 and 1868 gave tribes such powers. The legislators also said that a 1990 opinion by the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals said the state has no jurisdiction over highways running through Native American land without tribal consent. That is the accurate point of view. The Fort Laramie treaties established sovereignty for Native lands and were relied upon heavily when discussing the Dakota Access Pipeline, but were trampled on repeatedly by Republicans until Obama at the last minute put a stop to it, and then Trump immediately entered office and of course said, oh, Dakota Access Pipeline can go through. And what the Sioux tribes here are trying desperately to do is avoid what's happened to Navajo Nation in the southwestern part of the United States. There are 170,000 people in Navajo Nation, and they now have more coronavirus cases per capita than any state. And they have a shortage in nursing, medical staff, critical patients had to be airlifted out of the reservation. They are as rural gets, and we've seen all of these dire reports about what's going to happen to rural areas who don't have the necessary medical resources to combat coronavirus. Well, it's happening right now in Navajo Nation, and the Sioux tribes in South Dakota are trying to prevent that from happening with all of their legal resources and correct legal power. They do have that sovereignty. But the Republican governor there has not done pretty much any restrictions on businesses. The Sioux tribes have done lockdowns, stay-at-home orders that the rest of the state has not. So it's really a black and white issue there where they are governing in a responsible way. The South Dakota governor is not doing so, and they want to protect themselves and insulate themselves from that recklessness. And they have the sovereign power to do so. But the Republican governor wants to take them to federal court. And unfortunately, because Republicans have been so dominant, there are way too many conservative judges. So we just have to keep the pressure on them, and hopefully the courts listen to outside pressure, even though they pretend that they actually don't.